lovely. Right. Can't be a bit of Assam tea. Now, the very sad passing of Edward Sexton, who was one of the last proper tailors on Savile Row. I think I might have said something about him already, but really lovely guy. Huge respect. I've never considered myself a tailor. I've always wanted to describe myself as a manufacturer. But I was lucky enough to know a lot of these guys in the early days in Savile Row. And it just reminded me of a conversation I had with Edward Sexton when he came into my shop in Chelsea. Just talking about early days. And I said, oh yeah, when I got started I had to do bloody canvassing all day. Just putting the canvas on the inside of jackets, which is never seen. But it has to be sewn in perfect arcs, like that. And there's cross stitches that go on it, and the crosses have to line up to a point like that. And people come and check your work's okay. And I'm talking to Edward Sexton about this, you know, so what you all get started doing. So you're doing this canvassing, and he said, yeah, I did that. And I said, yeah, well, I said, this guy one day came up and I'm canvassing, and he said, what do you think to what you've done? And I said, well, seems okay. And he said, well, I think you ought to do it again. And I just said, oh, okay. And I started to unpick it. He said, no, I'm only kidding. He said, but that's how we tell if people are ever going to be any good at this. The ones that moan and say, oh, things look wrong to me. He said, we know they're never going to be any good. The ones that say, yeah, okay, we know they're going to be all right. And as I said that, Edward Sexton said, same thing happened to me. He said, I've forgotten about it. He said, exactly the same thing happened to me. That must have been the way, the standardised tailoring textbook way of finding out if anybody's going to be any good. But, of course, Edward Sexton associated with Tommy Nutter, sadly missed on Savile Row. But I remember a lot of the people in tailoring and in manufacturing, because I've always been involved with vintage, people like Ralph Lauren and Burberry and all these big companies, would come along to vintage shops to get stuff for archive and for copying, or even just to check how a particular shoulder goes or something like that. They wouldn't necessarily copy the whole garment. They're just little detail. And I remember I loaned this jacket, this velvet, 1930s velvet smoking jacket. Now, moths don't eat cotton, so the cotton velvet is absolutely fine, but silk can get attacked by just what's in it, just falls to pieces. And I've had this in my storeroom for a very long time now, intending to restore it, because the coat is fine, just needs to be refaced, which is going to be done entirely by hand. So I've got to get some nice dark green or black silk grosgrain and replace the lapels on this. But I loaned this to Tommy Nutter, and he kept it for about a year before he gave it me back. And of course he would make things like this. This is a Tommy Nutter smoking jacket, and this is almost exactly the same as this one. I just like to think that he might have used my model to create this particular jacket. The thing that Tommy Nutter would do is very interesting. See, he was a superb tailor. He wasn't just a rock and roll guy, he was a superb tailor. And he would do little, like, tailoring jokes, like on this jacket, it's got a drop shoulder. The shoulder seam doesn't go to the centre of the top, which is a modern way of doing things. Before the war, it would go down to the back so that you wouldn't see the seam if you were looking face on somebody. Because it's easier to do alterations if you do a seam across the top. That became the standard way to do it. But really good tailors and really old tailors might still do the drop shoulder. And if you're a young tailor, it's a bit showing off to do a drop shoulder. But sure enough, Tommy Nutter liked to show off a little bit, and we've got the drop shoulder on this one, even though this was made in the late, I think early 80s, this one. So yeah, Tommy Nutter, Edward Sexton, really heroes of Savile Row.